People who were on show like Supernanny, World's Strictest Parents, or Scared Straight. What was the experience like, and what was the aftermath? A coworker was featured on Supernanny. They had a pretty good experience filming and were so excited for their show to air that they hosted a watch party. I'm sure you can imagine what's next. The way the show was edited made the parents look so bad, like neglectful bad, and made the kids, who were pretty wild, look even worse. It ended up being a pretty awkward watch party. I'd like to contribute. Hopefully someone sees this. My brother was on a show called Violent Children, Desperate Parents, and honestly they were brilliant. I wasn't part of this whole experience because I was in university at the time, but my father and my brother both were in this show and the show staff were honestly brilliant. Here in the UK, especially Wales where my family lives, mental health is not really a thing the poor have access to, and my family are definitely working class. This show gave my brother and my father access to mental health care they would have never have been able to access themselves, and made quite a large difference in both their lives. They continued to support my family for almost a year after filming with offers of more mental health help, and both my father and my brother are happier people today because of this. One thing I will say is the only reason we were featured on this show was out of pure desperation. There was basically no other way that my father could imagine getting help, given he'd spent almost 8 years fighting with the NHS to get my brother psychological help, all to basically no avail. My family were made into entertainment for the masses so that we could access something fairly basic. Something about the whole experience doesn't sit right with me at all. Happy to answer any further questions. It sounds like they actually wanted to help instead of creating a bunch of crap for TV like they do here in the States. I get your frustration though. No one should have to be a form of entertainment to get the help they need. I'm a little bit late to this one, but my younger siblings, mother, and then stepfather were on a program in the UK called Mums on Strike in the mid 2000s. The premise was that the mother would be sick of doing everything around the house, and would be whisked away to a luxury spa for a weekend, leaving the clueless father in charge of trying to take care of the household duties. A lot of the conversations and scenarios were faked. I supposedly visited them for the weekend, but I did multiple different shoots across a few hours on the last day of filming, then went back home. They'd cause fights between the siblings by purposely creating situations where one was favored over the other, so the others would throw a tantrum. There was a shoot on location in our local town center, and they encouraged my little brother to run off into all sorts of different shops, causing hilarity as my stepfather tried chasing after him with 2 other children in tow. Mealtimes were a bit of a farce as well, as it was a weekend. My stepfather had to cook a traditional roast dinner. The production company intentionally supplied incorrect ingredients to make sure my stepfather looked like an idiot. They filmed my reaction to him trying to add beans to the roast a few different times, so they could pick the best one. In the end, after they'd got all the footage they wanted, they sent one of the production team out to the chippy to get us some actual edible food. I was on Scared Straight and my episode never even aired because they only select a very small amount of footage to make it look a lot worse than it actually is. Most prisons were pretty nice. In 8th grade our class took a field trip to the county's jail and courthouse. A few of the people locked up just flipped us off through the one-way glass and I think one mooned us. Apparently it never happened because the teacher was shocked, but we thought it was the epitome of comedy. It's not prison, just a jail, but most people there seemed pretty chill for the most part. I don't know if this counts, but I was on an episode of Made on MTV, if anyone remembers that show. It was my senior year of high school, so about 7 years ago. People gave me crap about it forever and still do. I was made into a screamo singer. The experience is interesting to say the least. The money and flight trip to NYC though at 17 years old made the whole embarrassment worth it. Plus I work in the broadcast business now, so it really opened up a lot of doors and showed me a career I love. Seeing kids now that were in my shoes, so fascinated by entertainment media, makes me so genuinely happy. If anyone is interested I'll tell more or answer questions. Not sure if that's the kind of show you're looking for. Friend of mine worked on Nanny 911 in NYC. Nothing on that show happened unless the producers okayed it. They would come up with scenarios and plot points to film. You don't just shoot TV shows like that and hope that something magical happens. They created every issue. Reality TV is not real. My friend was on Supernanny. They don't actually do anything. It's just acting. He and his brother are still exactly the same as they were before. I feel like South Park's edition of Supernanny would be more accurate. He spit in my mouth. It's best not to get on his level. Like 3 years ago, I lived in a big 5-bedroom house with 4 other friends in college. The house was in an episode of Supernanny. We found out because our nice neighbor literally gave us a signed headshot from Joe Frost as a gift out of the blue. He literally told us, "I think y'all would like this more than me," and get a kick out of it. It made our week and we found the episode online and watched it. I asked about the family to the neighbor as our house was rented out and owned by a property company. He told me after the show the parents fought all the time, lost all of their money due to 2008 crisis, and lost the house to foreclosure. The picture stayed on our mantle for 3 years and I thought about that family every time. It was all nice and wholesome and then it crashed and burned at the end. One of my friends in grad school was on Nanny 911 as a kid, maybe around 5 years old. There were a lot of kids in her family and one of the biggest problems the nanny had with their household was safety. She baby-proofed the entire house and lectured them on safety precautions they have to take in their lives to ensure that the children wouldn't get hurt. She even gave them all helmets to wear whenever they rode bikes or four-wheelers. After she left, a lot of the safety precautions went out of the window and later my friend told me that they still had the helmets but they were all sitting in a dusty corner. I remember that episode. I don't understand parents who don't make their kids wear helmets. I went to an all-boys correctional school 40 miles into the high desert in Washington state. A couple other guys there went on shows like this and they never worked, hence being at the correctional school. The school did pretty good straightening most of us out. However, unfortunately there's always a couple guys who just won't follow rules. If our school couldn't help you, you would be sent to the other place, which was basically a terrible juvenile prison in Mexico that was ran by US Marshals. One day one of these marshals came to give a talk. He spoke about the other place and basically scared the crap out of us. At the end of his speech he said, "And unfortunately one of you is coming with us today," and we all simultaneously crap our pants. He says the name of the kid he was taking. We'll call him Carlin. He then tells Carlin to empty his pockets, take off his shoes and belt, and places him in handcuffs. The director of the school said some encouraging words to him and asked if any of the students wanted to say bye or wish him well. Dead silence. Then his roommate stands up and says, "I packed your stuff. You had no bags, so I put all your crap in some trash bags. Oh, and I'll miss you, I guess." A piece of Carlin died that day. I never heard from him or about him after that day. Based off the rumors about that place in Mexico, it's possible he could still be there. And it's been 7 years since that day. Edit. Wow, this blew up even more than I could imagine since last night. So many of you have asked if I'll write a book and how you can hear about it. Yes, I am going to write the book thanks to you kind Redditors that have shown so much interest. I think the best way to follow up about the book is to follow my Reddit, and I will post updates from there. Redditors, you guys are all awesome. I never in a million years thought my experiences would be worthy of a book, but you guys have shown me otherwise. I'm very excited to write this out and publish it for you guys. Didn't end up on it, but my family was approached to take part in a German version of the reality show The World's Strictest Parents, Die strengsten Eltern der Welt. The reason being my father is somewhat well known in my country for being a bit of a wild man, looks like a Viking, very into the outdoors, fishing, hunting, etc. They'd found a special of him on 60 Minutes and a few clips of him adventuring online and thought that Germans would enjoy watching bad kids being set straight by the bear man. Anyway, the interaction was done through a middleman, so to speak, who outlined what would be required of us, and what small compensation we would receive for going along with it. At the outset it seemed fine, even a little exciting. We had close ties with a lot of exchange students in the past. We lived in a very small community in the mountains and we all loved traveling. And my father didn't seem to mind the sound of helping out some struggling kids and possibly showing them a different side of life. Not necessarily that hunting and the outdoors are the only way to go, but more open their minds a little and take them out of their comfort zone, etc. We watched a few clips of the show online and decided that we were laid back enough as a family that the drama wouldn't really wind us up or anything. Well, alarm bells started ringing after a bit more correspondence with the middleman. He started insinuating that there would be times where the kids would be told to play up situations, and that we would have to either roll along with the stage drama, or actively join in and amp it up for the cameras. My dad laid it out pretty straight, saying he'd be happy to take these kids under his wing and show them some pretty cool adventures. He had glacier crossing, hiking through rainforests, caving, whitewater kayaking, hunting, or at least watching him hunt, and tons of other activities across our country all planned out. I'd just become a scuba instructor and even offered to take them out diving on geothermal vents, but they really stressed the whole people watch this show to see bad kids act batshit crazy, so that's what you're expected to encourage vibe. We politely turned them down at this stage. A few months later, the middleman actually emailed us and told us it was probably a good idea that we hadn't gone along with it. Apparently they never paid him for any of his work organizing host families or setting up scenarios. Well, dodge a bullet there, I guess. All my friends in Germany seem to think so. TLDR. German reality show wanted us to encourage struggling teens to throw temper tantrums and make my dad look like an angry bear man. Turn them down. I knew a girl who was on Scared Straight. After the show she ended up addicted to H and going to rehab. Hope she got her life together. I'm pretty sure there's numerous studies showing Scared Straight extremely rarely, if ever, works. I didn't go on, but some classmates went on Super Nanny or Nanny 911. Can't remember which. They lived rather close to my friend, so I went over to his place to watch the filming and such. The nanny stayed in their neighbor's house across the street, and the kids' behavior didn't improve for a very long after the nanny left. From what I remember, they were trouble all through school. I lost contact with all of them during middle school. Edit. Just remembered. The parents ended up divorcing not too long after the show. I wouldn't imagine a nanny swooping in and putting a band-aid on the problem would fix anything like you said. If children are misbehaving, it's on the parents to tweak their parenting style to fix the problem. I lived in India. Once in my school when I was in 6th grade, these foreign kids pop up with a bunch of cameramen and stuff. Speculation went wild. We thought our terrible principal probably wanted to create a cool image for the school and was creating some kind of weird advertisement. Anyway, years later I saw a YouTube clip by complete chance of World's Strictest Parents. It was my school and those exact kids. They had come to an Indian family whose children went to my school. The episode was a lot of drama. The parents were kind of obnoxious, at least for the episode. However, the last I heard on asking a few friends was that those parents were fine and their children are doing reasonably well. Not sure about the foreign kids who came. What a small world. Seems like ages ago. I went to high school with a kid who was on Super Nanny when he was like 11. Apparently him and his sister's behavior weren't all that bad, and that one day a camera crew just showed up at his house. He also told me they were trying to force an emotional scene where he would hug his mom and say he loves her forever or something, and he was like, no, that's gay, and they were like, please, and he was like, no. They settled on love you mom. I love you son. Mayo okay gay lord. My brother went to school with a kid from the Scared Straight show, the comb my chest hair kid, if you have seen the show. He said that the kid used to get messed with after the show aired, but now lives a pretty normal life and stays out of trouble as far as he can tell. So I would say that the show works, I guess, lol. That episode was so funny. My friend's family was on Nanny 911. They said most of it was staged and the nanny didn't actually have any effect on the family. I had a friend on World's Strictest Parents. She was approached by a producer late one night at a McDonald's because she was 15, drunk, and wearing a stolen police hat. Apparently the producers hang around looking for kids there a lot. Anyway, she did her parent swap, was moderately wild, came back and decided she wanted to be a chef. I don't think she finished at culinary school. She had a baby at 19 and is a great mom to 2 kids now. I was on supernanny. My siblings and I were out of control kids and my parents frankly didn't know what to do. I liked being in front of the camera for the most part. It's like a mini time capsule I sometimes watch every once in a while and witness how cringe I was. Nanny Jojo set up this reward chart for when we were good. Heck, once they even filmed me in timeout, haha. One of the couples on the Super Nanny show got recognized and reported to the cops by their neighbors. I can't remember the name of the family, just that they had a few kids and that the older one had sometimes missed school to watch the younger ones. I had a friend who was on the first season of Nanny 911. According to her, there really wasn't anything wrong with the kids behavior wise, but there were 7 young girls in the family and 3 were triplets. The craziness was dramatized for the most part, and the real reason why her parents decided to be on the show was for the paycheck so they could build an addition on the smallish house they had. Their father passed away very recently due to lung cancer from 911. He was NYPD and worked overnight, so they ran that house very strict. All the kids turned out great and they're all beautiful and unique young women now. My auntie was once on Jeremy Kyle, which is basically a British version of Dr. Phil but with families of C kids and stuff who take lie detector tests. Sometimes it can be really serious and other times it can be stupid, like tests to see who stole the lawnmower to buy black tar H. Her ex-boyfriend wanted a DNA test to see if the child was his. Surprise surprise it was, and months later he left her anyway. Now my auntie has 6 kids to 5 different men and she constantly lectures me about getting a job when she's 32 and never worked a day in her life. I'm guessing she doesn't want you to end up like she did. My uncle's family was featured on Extreme Home Makeover due to a rare condition my cousin has. They got a brand new house, car, and mostly paid vacation. My grandparents drove out to the big revealing. They stood in the crowd of actors shouting "move that bus" for 3-4 hours during countless reshoots, while waiting on the host to show up. They ended up trading the car, due to it being impossible to insure for at least 6 months because of the new model. They installed an entire fish tank as a wall in my cousin's room, which ended up leaking and causing water damage into almost the entire house, including basement. The crazy home temperature control cost a fortune, which compounded with everything else they had dealt with in a 6-month span caused them to just sell the house in the end. Honestly, from what all the comments about those home remodeling shows, it sounds like the best idea is to just sell it. When I was about 6, my sister and I were on a show similar to Supernanny. They straight up told us what to do so they could get all the footage, and literally none of the solutions the nanny came with lasted more than a few days. 100% staged and acted. Not really relevant, but along in the same theme of parents and kids being told to overact and stuff. When I was 13, me and my parents were interviewed for a BBC show called Living with the Enemy for an episode where the parents were to spend time with the band Cradle of Filth because their child was a fan and they supposedly disapproved. My parents weren't being outraged enough and it was suggested they should be more upset about their precious small child liking such a band because it would make better television. My parents just didn't have it in them because they really weren't that bothered because I was a good kid. The family who ended up on the program were massively overdramatic and the kid was 18, so probably not the same impact as it would have been with me, an oh so impressionable little girl, had my family cooperated. I also still have the interview tape over 20 years later as they sent it to us, along with a bunch of signed band merch for me. Something similar. I dated a girl who ended up on Dr. Phil. I was in the Navy at the time and was in Hawaii or doing circles off the coast of Mexico. When I returned, our apartment was gone, my stuff sold off, girlfriend nowhere to be found. Turns out while I was haze grey and underway, she broke into houses to feed an addiction to drugs, OD, in a public toilet and gotten arrested for aggravated robbery with a deadly weapon. Now mind you, I was out to sea for the span of a month. I knew she had a past with drugs and I would take her to methadone clinics and AA meetings, so I wasn't completely blindsided. Well, getting back to the reality TV show, somehow Dr. Phil got involved and she was given a choice: go to jail or go on Dr. Phil. I really hate Dr. Phil. However, her segment was real. From the psycho mother to the not so bright girlfriend. To end the story, she ended up going to a rehab center requested by Dr. Phil to avoid jail time. Last I heard, she was good for a few years and relapsed again. I went to college with someone whose family was on extreme makeover. It financially ruined them and I think they ended up homeless for a short while because of it. He told me his parents say how much they regret being on the show every day. I didn't press for more info than that. That show was entirely trauma-y and sounds like it did more damage than not. Just came here to say that anytime I got into an argument with my parents between ages 10-12 I would sit in my room and stress about if they would send me to brat camp or whatever. Scary as crap, man. Family in my neighborhood was on, I believe, Nanny 911. We lived in a gated community, which I think often fosters a grossly entitled and cliquish community. The family basically became the hot gossip and they were openly shamed and ridiculed. Within a year they had sold their house for significantly less than they paid and moved a town over to escape the communal ostracism. I was on an episode of Intervention. Does that count? It was probably 90% real. The only thing that was scripted were the producers setting up scenarios to easily score drugs or directing us to specific neighborhoods to go to. One night they also stole most of my cash to instigate drama. They told me at one point that I couldn't sit around and watch cartoons all day because they were making a TV show after all. During filming, the interventionist was very much acting as if she was my newfound BFF and we are going to be super close for the rest of our lives. After the cameras stopped rolling I never heard from her again, though I did reach out several times. I did stay in touch with a couple of cameramen and a producer though, and we remain friends to this day all these years later. Not sure if this counts, but my grandma was on Hoarders. Me and my cousin were around 6 at the time and we had been driven over to see her. The whole camera crew and stuff was there. They had just finished up, and we were amazed by how clean the house looked. We didn't get taken there often because of it, but we knew how messy the house was. A couple of the guys told us to just play and run around the house, even jump on the bed. It was likely for some post-cleaning. OMG, it's so much better, everyone is happy, look, even the kids are seen. But it was just fun for us to run around. A post-study was done indicating the participants of the first Scared Straight were 60% more likely to reoffend than non-participants. I'd look up the source, but frick it, it's 3 in the morning and I'm on the toilet. The show Rock School was at my school for the second series, the first series being shot at a posh school, and they wanted to contrast by going to a rough school. Loads of people applied for it but didn't get accepted because they wanted people who couldn't play instruments. So one day Gene Simmons rocks up at school and everyone mobs him, despite the fact that 99% of these 13-16-year-olds probably couldn't name a Kiss song or were even remotely interested in Kiss. I'm not even sure the kids who were in the band got to spend a great deal of time with him, but they did have one session with Tommy Iommi and I got a glimpse of him, which was cool being a Sabbath fan. Anyway, they did their gig for the series finale and that was that. The singer of the band was given a shady record deal and had a few songs in the charts, but after his career never really took off he unfortunately took his own life. Really sad story. I did an application for Big Brother years ago. Got through a couple of cuts. There were like 50 of us in a room and they told us to act out fricking someone on the floor. I looked around at everyone doing this and couldn't stop laughing. That was it for me. If you are new to the channel, you can subscribe. I publish new videos every day. Until then, check another video. Bye for now.